When you think about corals and coral reefs, you think about how they obtain energy from the sun, like the corals you're seeing now. But what if I told you there's a whole group of corals that actually don't do this at all? Welcome to Reefcraft, and today we're going to be talking about non-photosynthetic corals, or NPS corals. And like their name suggests, they actually get no nutrients from the sun through photosynthesis. They have to physically capture their food that's floating in the water column, which means you typically find them in the darker areas of the reef, in caves or overhangs. And you also don't typically see them throughout the day. They're a lot more obvious at night when they've got their tentacles out ready to feed. Now I have to admit I'm pretty biased to photosynthetic corals because I don't have a lot of footage of these species, but I'm going to show you as many different species and different locations as possible. The first species we're going to look at is Tabastria aurea. Now these guys were found in and around Botany Bay in Sydney. I unfortunately didn't get any videos of these guys opening up, but they actually have incredibly bright yellow tentacles that come out and feed, generally at night. And that's why this entire group of corals is known as sun corals. Now leaving the waters of Australia, we enter Indonesia, and this Tabastria aurea is also heavily abundant here, and they usually are quite abundant on these barges and oil rigs and things like that. There are heaps of different species of Tabastria, and the reason why this one is aurea is it's got more tightly packed polyps and it's more hemispherical. These barges provide perfect homes for them, and that's why you end up with like a monoculture with heaps and heaps in one area. I mean, these guys are so happy all their feeding tentacles are out during the day. Now when I used to work in public aquaria, I actually had a chance at breeding these, and they would also show up everywhere where you didn't want them. They will actually spawn and grow in the pipes and plumbing and all the areas of your sump. Pretty much anywhere that's dark and has good water flow, they will start popping up. This is another species of Tabastria, but has slightly longer, more elongated polyps. And this one was found feeding underneath an artificial reef in Indonesia. If we go back to the coastal waters off Sydney, we can actually see the food that these corals eat. I'm using this weedy sea dragon to kind of demonstrate the amount of food in the water. It's feeding on those mice and shrimp you can see there, but all the other stuff floating around is all those microorganisms that these corals eat. And this next one is no different. This is Dendronethia australis. Now this one is actually an endangered species, commonly referred to as the cauliflower coral for pretty obvious reasons. This coral actually expand and contract depending on the food availability in the current at that time. So you can see this one is quite expanded here and lots of particles in the water. That's all the phytoplankton, all the microorganisms that would feed these corals. Unfortunately, this species is endangered because it is affected by quite a lot of sedimentation and human activities. But there is hope for it still, because there is some good populations in estuaries up and down the east coast of Australia. Another species of Tabastria is this Tabastria micranthus, also commonly known as the branching black sun coral. I was actually lucky enough to find this one with its polyps out during the day. Unlike other Tabastria, these guys actually enjoy being part of the reef. And what I mean by that is they almost act like an aquapora in some ways. They like to be high up in high flow areas. Another cool thing about this particular species is they actually create little tiny habitats and attract heaps of different species. I usually see them filled with different species of fish and shrimp on the reefs. But to see these guys in all their beauty, you have to see them at night. Now this one here was an awesome find on an actual artificial reef in Indonesia. And you can kind of see where they get their name of sun coral, which is kind of ironic because they only come out at night. And if you look, you can also see a heap of floating microorganisms that it's actively feeding on. These next two Tabastria, I really don't know. I think they're micranthus, but they could be something different. I mean, they have inverse colors, which is really cool. What do you guys think? Drop a comment if you definitely know the species. I don't know the actual species of these next Dendronethia, but this one is probably going to shock you. These actually live in a river mouth in Perth, Western Australia. Now, if you're familiar with the area, these are found in the Swan River. Most people probably don't expect to find coral in a river system. However, this is more like an estuary, and a lot of nutrients flows out of that river, so it's a perfect place for these sort of soft corals that feed on particles in the water. They're also really easy to find. You can find them in the shallows, like these ones are all less than 2 meters of water. And they always come in these pinks, yellows, golds, reds, all these different colors, which is one of my favorite things to look out for while I'm diving. Now I do know what these next ones are. These are Dendronephia hemprichi. And I found these in different locations in the Pacific Ocean. This colony of red ones on the jetty was absolutely stunning. I'm not going to try and pronounce the next species, but it's also known as the cherry blossom coral. Like other MPS, it's growing in darker areas on drop-offs or underneath ledges. It does resemble Gorgonians, but instead it has these clusters of polyps that look like blossoms. Which leads nicely into this Melithia. Now, I don't know the species because there's hundreds of them, but these guys are big sea fans or Gorgonian sea fans that you see in deep reef systems. They come in a wide range of colours, but typically they're in this red, orange or yellow range, but sometimes they're cream or brown. They can get huge and they can actually span out into the water meters off the reef. And if you look closely at the branches, you'll actually see the polyps extending out into the water column. Now they do like areas of high water flow with a lot of nutrients and upwelling. I did find large populations of them on this remote island in New Caledonia. The walls and drop-off areas of this reef were completely covered in them. And it's crazy to think how old some of these sea fans actually are. Another place you can find them is actually off Perth, Western Australia. This particular species is Melithia zimmeri, and are very brightly coloured, and I tend to find them in shallow caves off the coast. This next one is a Nella mollis. Now these guys resemble a lot of the Gorgonians but create this more like basket kind of shape. This next species, Muracella plectana, is kind of famous because it houses a tiny but cute pygmy seahorse. Now I'll give you a second to try and find out where exactly it is. And yeah, it's right there. Still can't see it? Well, here are some close-ups to give you a better idea of what they look like. Now, unfortunately, this isn't my footage because I didn't have the right camera on me that day, but this is the pygmy seahorse on the Muracella plectana. I mean, it doesn't look real. These things are stupidly cute. Alright, so we're getting close to the end here. I'm just going to rapid fire some species that I'm not 100% sure on. This one here is a Carajoa. I found this one in Indonesia, but I mainly see them in areas like around Bustleton Jetty, which this one's sitting on. Again, don't really know the species of it, but I know it's a Carajoa species. And then we have this really cool mystery Tabastria species that I found. It's growing on the side of a shipwreck. And finally, this cool Gorgonian I found kind of reminds me of blueberries for some reason, but yeah, not 100% sure what it is. And that's all I've got for today. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about these azooxanthellate corals. Let me know what else you want to see. This video is actually suggested by one of you. So drop a comment with what you want to see and I'll do my best to put something together. Alright, remember to like and subscribe and I'll catch you guys on the next video.